Welcome back to the third Art to Go. So bag number 3 we are on, and we're gonna dive right into our story. This month's artist is Beatrix Potter. And if you don't know who that is, maybe you know who Peter Rabbit is. And Peter Rabbit is actually a storybook character amongst others that Beatrix Potter created. So this book is called Saving the Countryside, the story of Beatrix Potter and Peter Rabbit. And it's written by Linda Ilovitz Marshall. The pictures are by Ilara Urbinati. On the third floor of a London townhouse, a young girl sketched pictures of her pet rabbit, Benjamin Bouncer. She also drew frogs, salamanders, turtles, and mice she had rescued from traps. Her name was Beatrix Potter, and she loved nature and the countryside, but she lived in the city. Beatrix and her younger brother Bertram were cared for and taught by nannies and governesses. They did not go to school or play with other children. Every day at the same time, they had lessons. Every day at the same time, they went on walks. And every day at the same time, their mother went to visit her friends, and their father went to his social club. And then came summer, freedom. Beatrix and her family, and even their pets, moved to the countryside. She and Bertram gathered eggs from chickens, fed ducklings from a spoon, and got fresh milk from cows. Beatrix loved the gardens with their lettuces, beans, and cabbages. Benjamin Bouncer loved the gardens too, but summer and the freedom of the countryside didn't last forever. One fall, Bertram went away to school, which was proper for a boy of his social class. Beatrix stayed home, as was then proper for a girl. She was not expected to travel, attend college, or work, but Beatrix wanted to do something important, something that mattered. She often helped her father with his hobby, photography. Together, they visited artist studios, art exhibitions, and museums. She learned from the artists and their work. She noticed fine details and tiny differences in facial expressions. Inspired, Beatrix went back to sketching. Using delicate, precise strokes, she sketched Benjamin Bouncer. She drew him from the front. She drew him from the side. She even drew him standing and wearing fancy clothes. Although women like her were not supposed to have careers, Beatrix sent her sketches to publishers anyway. She still wanted to do something important, something that mattered. One publisher, thinking she was a man, asked the gentleman artist for more pictures. Beatrix sent more, and she landed a job. Benjamin Bouncer landed one too. He began appearing on holiday cards, and Beatrix Potter began earning money. Beatrix also spent time studying and drawing nature. Using Bertram's microscope, she examined mushrooms. She wrote a paper about her discoveries and submitted it to a scientific journal published by the Linnean Society. But the scientists in charge, who were all men, would not seriously consider her work. Sad and disappointed, Beatrix returned to drawing bunnies. One day, Beatrix's friend, Noel Moore, was feeling ill. To cheer him up, she wrote him a story about a naughty little rabbit named Peter, who nibbled grumpy old Mr. McGregor's lettuce and came very close to being caught. Later, she called her story The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and made it into a small book just the right size for little hands. The tale of Peter Rabbit was of no interest to most publishers. One publisher considered it, but he took such a long time and Beatrix could not keep waiting. So using money she'd earned from drawing Benjamin Bouncer on holiday cards, Beatrix had 250 copies of the tale of Peter Rabbit printed. She put the books up for sale. Every copy sold. She ordered more copies. They sold too. The tale of Peter Rabbit was such a success that at last the publisher made her an offer. Beatrix Potter struck a deal. Beatrix made sure that her beautiful little books would not cost too much. She wanted everyone to be able to buy them. Beatrix kept writing stories. The Tailor of Gloucester, The Tale of the Flopsy Bunnies, The Tale of Benjamin Bunny, and others. In all, she wrote 23 little books. She illustrated her stories with pictures of cottages and gardens, faraway hills, country villages, farms, lakes, forests, and ancient stone bridges, all the places she loved. She also designed toys, games, and tea sets, and she put pictures of Peter Rabbit on them. She turned Peter Rabbit into a character. Beatrix wanted everyone, everywhere, to know that Peter Rabbit was her idea. To protect her creations, she copyrighted her work. Beatrix Potter, a woman who was not supposed to have a career, had created something important. She had created something that mattered, and she became an excellent businesswoman. Soon people all over the world knew about Peter Rabbit, and they knew about Beatrix Potter too. But Beatrix missed country life. So even though unmarried women were not supposed to buy property, Beatrix bought herself a farm. She bought cows and pigs too, and Herdwick sheep, a breed unique to the area. A few years later, Beatrix bought a second farm, and she married a man who also enjoyed country life. But Beatrix was growing older. She was changing. Her fingers were getting stiff, and her eyesight was weakening. She could no longer draw and paint in the delicate, precise way she always had. The countryside, too, was changing. Roads were widened and paved. Forests were sold. Trees were chopped down. Houses were built where there had once been farm fields. Little by little, the landscape that Beatrix loved, the farms, gardens, cottages she painted, was disappearing. The country was becoming more like a city. So Beatrix turned her attention to protecting the natural world, the world that she and Peter Rabbit loved. She bought another farm, and another, and then another. She bought cottages and gardens, farms and forests. To save the countryside that inspired her books, Beatrix Potter bought as much land as she could. She took care of animals and people too. When sheep took ill and farmers couldn't afford veterinary care, Beatrix paid the veterinarian bills and helped save the lives of many sheep. When flu spread through the countryside and rural families lacked medical care, Beatrix helped arrange for a trained nurse to live in the area and provided her with a cottage and a car. In the end, Beatrix donated more than 4,000 acres and 15 farms to an organization called the National Trust. She made sure the land would be cared for, protected, and cherished forever. So today, the cottages and gardens, hills, farms, lakes, and forests of the English Lake District still look much like they did when Peter Rabbit first hopped into Mr. McGregor's garden. Beatrix Potter did something important, something that mattered. She made millions of people, especially children, happy. With the help of her storybook friend, Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter rescued farms, animals, and wildlife. Together they helped save the countryside for all living things to enjoy. The end. So if you can see right here, you see some watercolor paints, and that is what you'll find in your Art to Go bag this week. You should have some watercolors, and then we included another paintbrush. Your watercolors might look a little different, but every bag should have them. And then what you also will find is a sheet of doodle patterns, a picture of a rabbit silhouette, and then there's 2 pieces of paper that are really thick. Those are watercolor paper, which are just kind of special for using watercolors. They soak up some of the water. So the first thing that I want to do is show you what I made with mine. You don't have to do these things, and I would really love if you would show us your projects, even if they don't look like mine. But one idea is that if you start, you can do this watercolor silhouette of your rabbit. So if you want to make this, what you're gonna do is take that pattern that you had and you're gonna cut it out. Be sure to save this because we have another project that you can use it for. So you're gonna cut this out and then you're gonna put it on your paper, and all you're doing is tracing around it. So you can kind of see my pencil marks there. And I just traced around my rabbit and then set that stencil aside. And then you're gonna take your watercolors. So you might need some water, maybe some paper towels, and that should be about it. And you're just gonna paint around it. You could also paint inside it and leave the outside without color. You could also paint some details on your rabbit. You could put colors inside and outside. You get to do what you want. But this is my example of a watercolor silhouette. Another project you can do with those same materials is you're gonna take your other sheet of watercolor paper, and this is what my end product looks like. To get to this, all you're gonna do is use your watercolor paints, and you're gonna make dots. Okay, and if you want to, you can do flowers. I picked flowers because I love spring, and then we're starting to see all those fun spring things, and Peter Rabbit's always hopping through clover and flowers and gardens. So I wanted to make my rabbit in a flower garden. And so what I did was made dots and lines with my watercolor. And if you look, there's also designs on top, and that was actually made with oil pastels, or you could also use crayons or markers, anything that you have on hand. And I just use that to add some details and some different colors. To make this middle piece, all you're gonna do is take your rabbit and a pencil, and you're gonna draw lines to separate sections. So I just drew line. I didn't use a ruler, but you could. So I drew a line there. Maybe you want to separate his ears, and then maybe his face or his tail, his legs. You can do big sections or you can do small sections, anything you want to do, but it kind of might look like that. Yours might look different because your lines will go to different places. You could certainly do squiggle lines if you want to, but this is just kind of to get you started. And then all I did was took my doodle patterns sheet and I filled in each section with different patterns. So if you look closely, you can kind of see the lines that I made to separate the sections, and then each section has a different pattern. It's as easy as that. So once your flowers dry, that's when you could use your crayons on top if you want to. If you want to make a completely different design on the back and still do the patterns, you can certainly do that. There's so many ideas that you could do. But if you want to do this one, you would let everything dry, you would fill in your patterns, and then you're going to glue it right on top, wherever you want to put it. And it's as easy as that. As usual, we'd love to see your projects, and we want to see you at the Red Rock Center for art classes if you are in the area. And we look forward to doing one more virtual art class after this. So this is number 3, and we're gonna do number 4, so watch for that next month. Have fun, everyone.